Do you ever crave a thick, cheesy slice of lasagna but still want to lose weight? I came up with a high-protein alternative that's just as flavorful, is helping me keep off 75 pounds, and cuts out hundreds of calories per serving. So let me show you what I eat instead of lasagna, plus 8 time-saving hacks to make the recipe even easier. Let's get into it. Have you ever tried browning ground beef in a pan and ended up with a splattered mess that you had to babysit for 20 minutes until it's done cooking? What if you could skip all that hassle and get other parts of the recipe done while your beef cooks? Just grab 448 grams or 1 pound of 96.4 ground beef, spread it out on a sheet pan, and sprinkle 6 grams of salt over the top. Instead of standing at the stove, put it in the oven about 6 inches from the broiler. Set a timer for 20 to 25 minutes and let it cook until it's nicely browned. I'm all about time-saving tricks like this, and it's a staple in my cookbook, Diet Cheat Codes. Now, while the beef takes care of itself in the oven, let's get a head start on something that needs a little downtime, the shell mixture. This liquid mixture is going to form the outer layer of our pasta dish, and the flour needs time to hydrate before it's ready for action. If you've never made a fresh shell for a pasta dish before, don't worry. I'll walk you through it, and if you'd rather skip it altogether, I'll show you a super simple substitute later on. Grab a high-sided container and add 3 eggs, 15 grams olive oil, 4 grams salt, 35 grams unflavored protein powder, 50 grams all-purpose flour, 10 grams potato starch, and 480 grams fat-free milk. No protein powder? No problem. Just swap in an extra 30 grams of flour instead. Personally, I like the extra protein boost, and it doesn't change the flavor of the shells at all. Blend everything until smooth. I use an immersion blender because it's easier to clean, but a regular blender works too. Once it's mixed, set it aside while we move on to the sauce. The problem is, most people waste ages chopping onions, and we want onion that melts into the background of the sauce anyway, which also saves us time sauteing them. So instead, we'll start by grating down 250 grams of onion. This step alone will save us 5 to 10 minutes of chopping and another 10 to 15 minutes of cooking. Now, here's where a lot of sauces get messed up, especially for new cooks. If you're not prepared, ingredients can burn or overcook before you know it. That's why I always prep all my sauce ingredients before I start it. Get everything laid out next to your pot so you're ready to go. We'll start by adding the grated onion to our pot that's preheating on medium heat and letting some of the excess water cook off. Once the steam slows down and evaporates, add the olive oil and stir. Let the onions saute, mixing every few minutes until they start to take on some color. But don't just stand there watching the onions. Let's get a head start on the filling. Here's a time-saving hack that most people miss. Instead of spending 10 minutes wilting spinach on the stovetop, grab a 284-gram frozen block of chopped spinach and microwave it for 3 to 4 minutes. This shortcut is not only faster, but saves us a big pot to clean and keeps the recipe rolling. So, what's going into the filling, Nick? Because this is where hundreds of calories sneak into every serving. I'm always experimenting with mixing high-calorie and low-calorie ingredients together to add volume without losing flavor. Finding ways to pack in flavor without piling on calories is always a challenge, and that's where HelloFresh, today's video sponsor, really delivers. HelloFresh brings everything right to your door, so you're not running back to the store for a missing ingredient or having to track calories. They do all the work. Each meal comes bagged up with clear recipe cards so you can easily follow along. I absolutely love that it gets me to try meals I'd never make on my own, like this chicken ramen noodle that took 20 minutes to make and tasted like legit takeout. If you're like myself, you want high protein meals, and HelloFresh has tons of rotating options every week. This creamy chicken, potato, and corn soup was insane. I'll let my girlfriend back me up on that.
This should be our stove for every single Wednesday for the next 3 months.
Get up to 10 free meals on your first box at HelloFresh.com with code E4CMFM. Free meals applied as discount on first box, new subscribers only, varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals and free shipping. Just go to HelloFresh.com with code E4CMFM. Start the filling by dumping 454 grams of whole milk ricotta into a large bowl. Quality matters here. I typically love using stabilizers in my recipes, but having them in our ricotta is no bueno. I highly recommend using a high quality ricotta that lists just milk, vinegar, and salt as the ingredients, like this Galbani tub. Next, we'll balance the high calorie ricotta with 448 grams of fat-free cheese. Normally, I'd tell you to grate your own, but unless you live in Texas, fat-free cheese only comes pre-shredded. You won't have to worry about the anti-caking powder here though. There's so much flavor going on in this filling, you won't even notice. And for just 40 calories with 9 grams of protein, it's well worth adding. For more bulk and extra creaminess, add 224 grams of 2% cottage cheese. It melts right in while baking, and the other flavors are so strong, nobody will ever know it's there. No Italian dish is complete without Parmigiano Reggiano. You can shred your own, but I highly recommend grabbing a pre-grated pack to save time. Add 45 grams along with 3 grams of salt and 3 grams of garlic powder. By now, our onion should be looking beautiful. It's time to add salt and black pepper, then stir in our mix of garlic paste, Calabrian chilies to bring some heat, and tomato paste. For the garlic and tomato paste, I'm using the tubed versions. They're a huge time saver compared to peeling and mincing garlic or fussing with a can. Let all these added flavors cook into one another for 2 to 3 minutes. While that's happening, chop up 15 grams of fresh parsley and add it to our filling. Most fresh herbs have so much more flavor than dried ones, so I personally wouldn't try to swap. Now, it's not a sauce without tomatoes. Pour in 2 cans or 1,588 grams of Cento all-in-one crushed tomatoes. I actually tested these side by side with Muti, and Cento won by a landslide, so if you want the best flavor, go with Cento. Don't let any of that tomato good go to waste though. Pour about 20 grams of water into each can, swish it around to catch every last bit stuck to the sides, and add that to the pot along with 2 grams of salt. Give everything a good mix, then let the sauce come up to a simmer. While it's heating up, get a non-stick pan with an 8-inch cooking surface, preheating on medium-low. But before we get to the shells, let's finish up the filling. Grab our microwaved spinach and squeeze out as much water as possible. This works best with a cheesecloth, but paper towels work too. This step is the difference between a rich, creamy filling and a soggy, bland one. After squeezing, the spinach goes from 284 grams down to about 120. That's a shocking amount of water that you don't want in your filling. Add the spinach to the filling mixture along with 1 beaten egg and mix everything thoroughly. In all seriousness, don't cut corners here. If you rush, you'll end up with pockets of spinach or random ass salty bites. And nobody wants that, especially your family who will love you forever after you bring this dish to Christmas dinner. It should look like this. By the way, I'll have reheating instructions in the pinned comment below for anyone interested. Now, for our meat. Take the beautifully browned ground beef and break it up with a meat chopper. This is one of the best kitchen tools known to man. I like a mix of small and big chunks for texture. When it's to your satisfaction, pour it into our sauce and give it all a good stir. At this point, the only thing left to finish is the outer shells that's going to hold everything together. And the timing couldn't be better. The sauce needs to simmer and build flavor for about 30 minutes. Give the sauce another stir and turn down the heat to medium-low. Here's where things can go sideways if we're not careful. Before we start pouring our batter, let's give it a good mix, scraping the bottom of the container. The starch likes to settle down there, and if you skip this step, your shells won't have any structure and will crack or fall apart. Give it another quick stir every 3 to 4 shells to keep everything evenly combined. Let's give our pan a quick spray with oil, then pour in 62 grams of batter and spread it evenly over the 8-inch cooking surface. Now, I like to lift the pan off the stove when adding the liquid because 1, it helps avoid drips and mess, and 2, we have better control over spreading the liquid into an even layer before it cooks too much and we can't spread it out anymore. And don't worry if your first shell looks a little rough. Just like pancakes, the first one always turns out the worst. We'll let it cook for about 2 to 2.5 minutes or until we can shake the pan and the shell comes loose like an omelet. Then we'll flip it and cook for another 10 to 15 seconds. This is what we call a crepe. We'll spray the pan again, add more batter, and repeat. I use this ladle, but an ice cream scoop works nearly as well. And in case you were tempted to possibly speed things up with a fancy crepe maker, I tried it. and it's on its way back to Amazon. I'll let you take a guess why. If your shells are taking too long to cook, turn up the heat a little bit. If they're cooking too fast, just turn the heat down and take the pan off the stove for a few seconds. And if the pan is way too hot, this is what will happen to your crepe. Trust me, you'll get the hang of it after a few shells. Let's keep going until we have 12 crepes ready to roll. This timing is perfect because our sauce should be finished now. We know it's ready when we could drag a spatula through it and it leaves a small streak behind like this. Or when cooled off, leaves a big streak behind like this. If you want to skip making the crepes, no problem. You can use manicotti pasta instead. This shortcut will save us about 15 to 20 minutes, but here's the trade-off. They're harder to fill, break easier, hold less filling, and are much lower in protein. Plus, I found the homemade crepes both lighter and creamier, and my girlfriend agreed. I'll put directions in the pinned comment on how to cook them if you decide to go that route. For a finishing flavor, we'll add 10 grams fresh basil to our sauce, mix it in, and take it off the heat. If you see a little extra water from the basil, that's totally fine. It will cook off in the oven. Now it's time to put our masterpiece together. So let's grab a 9 by 13 inch baking dish and fill her up. Start by covering the bottom with a thick layer of sauce. This helps keep our shells from sticking or drying out. Now grab one of our shells and lay it brown side up on the counter. With our filling on the scale, scoop out about 110 grams and shape it into a tube. Place it in the center, roll the shell up like a burrito, and add it to the baking dish. Make sure to leave about 1.5 inches of bare shell on each side. This lets us fold the ends in as we roll so the filling stays perfectly sealed inside. Repeat this with each shell until our dish is full. I like to leave 1 inch or so between each row of 6 shells so they don't get crowded and bake evenly. Then we'll add another layer of sauce on top of the crepes. We don't want to drown them in sauce though, just enough to keep them moist while baking. We'll save the extra sauce for serving on the side. Now, for the best part, more cheese. Evenly sprinkle 224 grams of freshly shredded part skim mozzarella over our saucy crepes. I highly recommend taking the extra 2 minutes to shred it ourselves because this is the very first layer our taste buds touch when eating this dish. AKA, this is where we want the most flavor possible. The wildest part about this meal is you'd never guess it's high protein and low calorie just by the taste. That's the standard for every single recipe in my cookbook, Diet Cheat Codes. You still get to eat all of your favorite foods, which is why it has helped thousands of people not only lose weight, but keep it off. Get VIP early access to recipes like this one and use code E4CM for 10% off. To keep the cheese from sticking, lay down a sheet of parchment paper, then cover the dish with aluminum foil. Bake in a preheated 400-degree oven on the same rack you cooked the ground beef on. After 30 minutes, remove both the foil and parchment and bake for another 15 minutes. To take this dish to the next level, we'll use the broiler one more time for 2 minutes to brown the cheese to perfection. Just keep a close eye on it because it can go from perfectly browned to black and burnt in just a few seconds. And would you look at that masterpiece. Serve each piece of manicotti with about 35 grams of additional sauce and you've got a meal that will impress anyone. I love eating 2 at a time, which gives me 6 meals for the week, and each serving packs in 80 grams of delicious protein while keeping me full and satisfied. But Nick, hold on, what about dessert? That's usually what kills my weight loss progress. Well, in this video here, I'll show you how to make cheesecake that's just 1/3 the calories of the original and packs 30 grams of protein per slice. Until next time, deuces.